I spent 60 hours on my first game. I followed a tutorial line by line, comma by comma, and by the end of it I was so burnt out that I quit for a year. Like most of us, I've always been a gamer, and one day I just thought, I wonder if I could make something like this myself. Of course, something smaller, but nonetheless, I'd love to give this a try. So I did what you probably did, and I went to YouTube and I searched how to make a game. So my game dev journey begins. Stick around towards the end of the video when I'll share these tips with you, and then you can be more successful in your own game dev journey. So day one of deciding to be a game developer was spent watching YouTube videos on which engine I should try. And I landed on GameMaker because GameMaker had a scripting language called GML. And this was intriguing to me because it was meant to be an easy language to learn. It was a hybrid between Java and C++. And GameMaker also offered a visual scripting language, so you could avoid code entirely if you wanted to. And so as a beginner, this really appealed to me. So next I decided to look into courses, and I went on Udemy and I found this course where you can make a complete game from scratch for beginners. And the course was fantastic. I spent 60 hours. I went through and copied every single line of code. And at the end of it, I made a complete game and I shipped it. I was so proud and I thought, I have done it. I am now a game developer. For my next project, I opened up GameMaker again and I realized I couldn't even replicate the first thing I needed to do to start a game. I had learned absolutely nothing and I felt like I'd gone back to square one. And this made me feel so burnt out. I started watching another couple of tutorials. I restarted the Udemy tutorial again and I felt lost and I quit. And that was it for at least a year. A year later, I came back and this time I discovered Godot. And Godot really stood out to me. It looked like the game engine that was perfect for my needs. It was fairly beginner friendly compared to the other options like Unity and Unreal Engine. And I quite liked the idea of this GDScript engine as well because it was somewhat beginner friendly. And I'd seen so many games that had been made in Godot that looked incredible and something that I would have loved to achieve. In Godot, everything is broken down into nodes as well. So every object is a node. And that really matched the way my own brain works. And so it was good for me. Godot's strength is 2D games as well. And I knew I wanted to make 2D games, but there's also the possibility of moving into 3D games later if I wanted to. So in my first week of working in Godot, I remember I tried to put together some really simple game. I think I spent 8 hours to work out how to change the direction of a sprite as it went the other way on the screen. 8 hours, and I was trying to struggle through so I didn't fall back into tutorial hell just like I had done before. But I did eventually succumb back to the tutorials. I went to Udemy and I got a great tutorial from a creator called Firebelly. Big shout out to Firebelly. His tutorial was excellent, but when I went through the tutorial, I committed that I would follow every line of code, but understand it. And I ended up building the game. I made my own changes and adaptations to each chapter in the tutorial where I made my own game from it. But it meant that I really understood the code and understood how I was creating the game at the end of it. So this was really useful and I came away with a good understanding. At the same time, I was following along with a free course called CS50P from Harvard University. And this course teaches you the absolute foundation of code, specifically around Python, which is very similar to the GDScript that Godot uses. So that was really helpful as well. I can't understate how valuable that course actually was for me to understanding the principles of coding and the foundational knowledge that allowed me to do better. And the CS50 course takes you kind of way beyond the knowledge you need for code as a beginner game developer, I would say, if you're making small games. But it meant that then I was really comfortable when I was doing my own code and understanding code from tutorials in the engine as well. I would recommend the CS50P course. Even if you don't finish it, it still can provide a ton of value and it's free. Hey, quick interval from the editing room. I hope you're enjoying the video so far. If you are, please consider liking and subscribing. This is actually my first week on YouTube, so your support right now really helps me grow. Thanks, back to the video. You can also find so many great YouTube tutorials online as well, and I would recommend these, and maybe even more so than the long form tutorials from Udemy like I started with, because when you have these bite-sized tutorials on YouTube, it forces you to understand how each of the components work, so you can start linking them together when you use other tutorials from other creators for different parts of your game. And eventually the penny starts to drop. And I remember my first game where I was just coding and I wasn't having to refer back to tutorials and I was just doing it myself. The penny had dropped and it felt amazing. And that is when my creativity was able to flow. So there's several things that I would kind of recommend if you're a beginner game dev or if you're looking to start game development. The first tip would be learn to love the docs, the documents, and particularly with Godot. I'm not so sure about Unity, but when you control and click on any function in the engine, it will bring up the relevant page on the documentation and it will tell you exactly what the function does, how you use it, and how you adapt your code to fit that function. It's really useful and get used to using it. And I know it's boring sometimes reading documentation, but this is one of the best ways to grow your skills. The next tip would be after any big tutorial, make sure you go away and just make something yourself with the things you've learned. I've made so many games, mostly unpublished, Flappy Bird clones, brick breakers, little platformers, all these tiny games that you can make within a couple of weeks that really embed that knowledge that you're learning from the tutorials. And this way you avoid falling into tutorial hell. My next tip is probably one of the most important. The game does not have to be good. I'll say it again. The game does not have to be good. Just make something small and ship it. There's plenty of time for you to make good games. Try not to focus too much right now on being perfect. And that's one mistake I made as a beginner. I was trying to make the perfect game. I was spending so much time on the art and I was burning out halfway through each game process. And it's important to remember that the last 20% of your game will take 80% of the time. So just put some ideas together and start to ship the game. And I heard from one YouTuber, it was a great idea that everything in your game, the pitch, should be able to fit onto the back of a post-it stamp. And if you can't fit the ideas of your game, what it's about, the loop on a post-it stamp, it's too complex and it's too big for right now. And that's great advice. And it's advice I wish I had when I started my game dev journey. Make small games and it doesn't have to be perfect. Tip 4, when you've made your game, ship it on itch. I've made so many games and only a fraction of them have I ever actually uploaded anywhere. There's several games I have now on itch.io and they get played and there's feedback and that feels really good. And I wish I'd put everything on there. The other thing is it motivates you to actually finish the game. So publish your games and you'll get used to putting your game in that complete package. The next tip, and something that I would change from when I was a beginner game dev, is the art process and sound as well. You don't have to make everything yourself. You can go on itch.io or the asset store of your engine and there will be so many assets available to you and many of them are free as well. If you want to just focus on creating a game, don't worry about the art right now. Don't worry about the sound. Use something that's already out there and get on with making the game. You can always replace the arts and the sound later. So don't worry about doing everything yourself. The last thing is to join a game jam. When I started creating games, I waited way too long to join a game jam. And when I did, this was one of the best experiences I ever had in my game development journey. I looked and found a game jam that was starting soon. And you can go onto itch.io to the game jam page and you can see this horrible calendar, quite honestly, of loads of different game jams, what's involved and when they're starting. And each of the game jams will have a certain set amount of time that you can develop in, and also a unique theme. So pick one that suits you and join. And when you start to build your game, you will learn loads and you will have loads of fun. And the other important thing, it brings together a community of like-minded people. Don't feel like you have to be a pro before you join a game jam, because that's what I did and I should have done it months earlier. Just have fun. Again, ship something very small, but make it very polished, and you'll do well in the game jam. My first jam was the Farm Jam back in 2024, and I actually came first in my first ever game jam. I'm going to make another video about that, so stick around for that one. But the game jams are a great experience and you will learn a load. So years later, as a game dev creator, where am I now? Well, I'm still messy. I've made several small games though as a hobby in my spare time, and I enjoy every single one of them, and each one gets better as I learn new things and learn from my mistakes. I've taken part in a few more game jams, and in my spare time now, I've shifted my focus more towards selling asset packs of pixel art on itch.io. And in case you want to check those out, I'll link them in the description. And that's just 2D pixel art asset packs for game devs. If you got this far in the video, thank you so much. This is my first week making videos for YouTube, so please consider clicking the subscribe button. If you already clicked it, please don't click it again. But also leave me a comment of where you are in your game dev journey. The support means so much, it will help me grow. And yeah, if you did make it this far, thanks again, I appreciate you. See you on the next one.